great uncle was visiting, and he gave me, as an 8-year-old boy, an astronomy book. And so I made the logical conclusion that my uncle and I must be astronomers. And so I've always had a dedication to the field, and it was no more complicated than that. It was a lot of fun. In the Boy Scouts, I ran off and got my astronomy merit badge. In college, I studied astronomy. Discovered that, except for Conrad, there are very few people who can make a living in astronomy. And so I got into computers. But it's been a lifelong enjoyment for me. And my specialty is stargazing. And the reason for that is that when you tell people you're an astronomer and it's dark outside, they will immediately say, well, what's that? And that's tough if you don't have your map or your iPod app or your iPhone app to hold up and say, well, clearly that's Arcturus, a constellation. So then the next mistake I made along that line was to take my kids out and say, let's go stargazing. And of course, they could never see what I could see, right? So, well, there's Andromeda, the princess. Now, all of you have looked up at the night sky many times. I'm sure you've seen a lot of stars. At Tahoe or Yosemite, you've seen a lot of stars. Here, you don't see quite so many. Have any of you ever seen the princess? No. Flying horse? No flying horse. How about a lion? Lion's actually pretty good. You can make a case for the lion. Of the constellations, and we're short, it might be possible to sit on the tables for those of you that are teenagers. I hesitate to suggest that. Some of the constellations you can make an argument for drawing the stick figures that you'll see in a lot of maps, but most of them you really can't. And there's some fabulous artwork that's been done over the ages of what some of these characters look like, but you're not going to find them. You might find them at Tahoe, there's enough dots, okay, but maybe there's too many dots. So what I've done is to develop a technique, and I've recently published a book on the technique, which is to say that one of the most important things when you're going to go stargazing in an evening is to know which constellations are actually up. Here at Chabot, I volunteer in the evening sometimes, and people will say, well, where's the Big Dipper? Well, if it's in the winter, it's behind those trees. It's very low, right? Or they come in the summer, and of course everybody wants to see Orion and Orion's belt. Orion's belt isn't there because we're facing the wrong part of the galaxy at night in the summertime to see Orion. So it helps a lot to know what you're going to see by season. So fall, spring, what's going to be up, what are your chances of seeing what you want to see. So the real keys to stargazing are remembering and recognizing. So you want to remember the patterns, you want to be able to find the patterns, you want to know which patterns are going to be there. And the way we do it, there's a technical term called an asterism or a star pattern. Now, a constellation is a really old term. The Greeks had 48 constellations, but they didn't include all the stars because they had extra stars that didn't fit their pictures. Today there are 88 constellations, a lot of them in South America that we can't see from here. But to see or to find a constellation, what you really want to do is look for a picture that you can find that's part of that constellation. Now you all know the Big Dipper. Do you know any other names for the Big Dipper?
Ursa Major.
The Great Bear, right?
Yeah.
The Great Bear is the constellation. The Big Dipper is just a piece of the constellation, but it's easily recognizable, so we call it an asterism or a star pattern. So if you want to find the Great Bear, don't look for the bear, look for the Dipper, and point in that direction. Say, oh, of course there's the Great Bear. Now, we mentioned knowing what's up at a given time of year is important. You can cheat because as we go around, you can pick up 2 or almost 3 seasons. This time of year, the nights are so long. So if you get up real early in the morning, you're going to see something that you won't see at night or in the evening until 6 months from now. So if you're really dedicated and you stay up, you can see half or maybe even 2/3 of the constellations in a single night. And then the final thing is, it's kind of fun to know the names of a star, right? I point, and when you see Leo the Lion, you say, of course that bright star there is Rigel, right? Or Regulus, sorry. But when you go out to see Orion tonight, you know that his foot is Rigel and his shoulder is Betelgeuse, which is the best star name. Now this is the problem we face. In our galaxy, there are at least 250 billion stars. too many to draw pictures. At Lake Tahoe, maybe 3,000, unless you're using binoculars. And then you could probably see 100,000. But here in Oakland, it's so much easier. You're only going to see maybe 200 on a good night. Okay, and in the spring it'll be less. Now there's a lot of other great things to look at, but on any given night, you should be able to find between 6 and 10 pretty easily found constellations. Now you remember the Greeks had 48. 6 doesn't sound like a lot. You're not going to find all 48 because some of them are so dim you can't see them at all. But to find 6 or 10 on a night can be pretty satisfying. So here's the storytelling method that I'm going to recommend to you, and that is that I'll give you a story for fall, because this is a perfect time for this class. The fall changes to winter next week. In this part of the sky are the fall stars. In this part of the sky are the winter stars. So what we'll talk about now are just the fall stars, and then later, I guess at 9:30, I'll talk about the winter stars. But that's the real key. And then we group the stars together in a way you remember by having a story that has all those characters in it. And I'll give you an example in just a minute. So if you remember the story, you remember who was in the story, you know what constellations are up tonight. And then the last thing is we have an asterism for each of the characters. Now, if you want to see tonight, we can probably see later tonight, the big dog, Canis Major. Canis Major is a good dog. Looks like a dog, right? He's jumping, and he's got feet and a tail. It's a really good dog. Canis Minor, small dog, we call him a 2-star dog. Okay? All he's got is 2 stars. In fact, there is another constellation, Aries. Or any of you know your star signs? Do we have any Aries in the room? You're lucky. Aries is up now, but it's a 2-star sheep. Okay, so you can draw your own sheep between those 2 stars. Any of you who have a sign that is wet, right? And by wet, what do I mean? The crab is wet. Aquarius is wet. Pisces is wet. Forget it. If it has anything to do with water, you can't see it.
Why would Aries be up now if you're like born in March, April?
Perfect.
And you get...
What is a birth sign? When you were born, your constellation, the sun was in your constellation.
Oh, yeah.
So that would mean you'd have to go out and look right at the sun, and besides being a really bad idea, you wouldn't be able to see it. So the best time to see your star sign is about 3 months ahead. Okay, because it's heading toward the west where the sun is. So now's a great time to see it. Okay, for those of you who might be Scorpios, right? It's just November, right? Best time to look for Scorpio is late in the summer. It's just right up over there, and it's just a beautiful constellation. So knowing the time of year is very important. So we have a different story for each season, and we borrowed most of them for the Greeks, except we had to make up one in this area. And the book that I will give you an opportunity to obtain later, if you want to, has all of the stories and all of the seasons in it. So if you decide that you're interested, please let me know. Tonight we're going to start with autumn. Now, do any of you know the story of Perseus?
Yeah.
Okay, so Perseus, what did he do? He took the head off of a monster. Right? And then Andromeda was a beautiful princess. Okay, so we've got a princess up tonight. We're going to find the princess. We have a king and queen. Cepheus, Cepheus, some people say, was the king of a very ancient kingdom. His daughter was Andromeda. The queen was named Cassiopeia, which is too long for a story, so I just call her Cassia in the story. Then we have a 1-star demon. So we can see the eye of the demon that Perseus is going to kill. We have a 2-star sheep, we've already mentioned, which is really easy to find. And then we have Pegasus. Now Pegasus, unless you're in a really dark place, and then you can kind of make a horse out of it. What you're going to find for Pegasus is a great big square, called the Square of Pegasus. So in our story, this is a big square where they put a statue of Pegasus in the middle of the square. And then the Pleiades. Have you all seen the Pleiades before? A beautiful little star cluster? Okay, that's a great anchor for both the fall and the winter stars. So that's what's going to be in our story. So if I were to ask you very quickly, oh, it's fall, what can I see? You said, what the heck was that story? Okay, it was Perseus and Andromeda. Andromeda's mother and father, whatever their names were, king and queen, and well, there's sheep. I don't know if sheep got the story. And then there's Pegasus, but Pegasus is really a rock. Okay, now you know what you're going to find. Okay. I tell the story much better. Okay, now the asterisms we're going to look for have something to do with the character. So Cassiopeia was the queen of a famous country a long, long time ago. She was also later known as the Queen of Heaven. After she died, he was put up into heaven. Well, you can't find a queen, but on any given night, except for very, very late in the summer, you will find the W in the north. Sometimes it's an M, right? But it's always either an M or a W or an E or a sigma. Well, it's pretty much the same. If you think of it as a crown that's bent, well, who wears crowns? Kings, queens. Oh, I remember. It's the queen has the bent crown. So we're going to find Cassiopeia by looking for her crown. Now, Cepheus, or Cepheus, is hard. Because like Conrad, Cepheus is an astronomer, lives in a tower, right? And this is the shape that you'll find if you use your averted vision, and it's a nice dark night with no moon. It's tricky, but it is actually findable. These 5 stars and a couple of little extra ones down at the bottom. Now, Andromeda was chained to the rock. My wife did these drawings. She's an illustrator. And we thought, well, what can we do with this chain? And this is what Andromeda now looks like in the story. So these are the stars you can actually find. And that doesn't make a bad necklace. This star will be anchored on the rock because originally she was chained on the rock. So what we'll be looking for is this little pattern of stars near her mother, and that'll be the chain of Andromeda. So having found her chain, you point in that direction and you're pointing at the constellation of Andromeda. Get Conrad to show you this later. The closest major galaxy to us is the Andromeda Galaxy. It's just off the chain, just a little bit north of the chain. If you're at Lake Tahoe on a dark night, if you're in Yosemite Park in the high country on a dark night, you can see it with your naked eye. It's the only galaxy I know you can actually, or in the northern hemisphere, where you can actually look at. You say, what's that smudge? Stars don't smudge. Stars don't smudge. Okay, it's a galaxy. It's 2 million light years away. You can see that, you know your vision is in good shape. Now finally, Perseus is one of the most fun. If you look up the old drawings of Perseus, he's a fabulous warrior with a sword and a shield. Sometimes he's carrying this gory head of this monster that he cut the head off of. But in the story, do you remember what the Gorgon monster, why people were so afraid of her? If you looked at her, you would turn to stone. So somebody told Perseus, who was a kind of a country bumpkin, they said, don't look at her. He says, well, how am I going to kill her if I can't see her? Hold your shield backwards. Look in the shield, don't look in her eyes. And while you're looking in the shield, you can cut off her head. Well, amazingly enough, that's what you'll see. When you go out, you'll see the Perseus cluster here, open cluster. And then you'll notice, although you've probably never noticed before, there's a set of stars that make a really good backward shield. And one star out here. So it looks like, I don't know how many of you have Comcast and how many of you have the dish, right? But a lot of antennas had a dish in the back and an antenna in the spot. It looks just like that. And what you're seeing is the constellation of Perseus and this particular star called Algol, which was the star Eye of a Monster. Now why would they pick that star to be the Eye of a Monster? The Greeks believed everything in heaven was perfect, nothing ever changes. That star winks. It winks. Every few days, over a period of hours, it winks. It's actually a binary star, and when the stars go in front of each other, it gets dimmer. This really bothered people. It really, really bothered them. So they said that has to be something bad that's up in heaven, and so they made it the Eye of the Monster. So we'll look for Perseus, and we'll look for the Eye of the Monster. Okay? So when you're outside later tonight, using your averted vision, your red flashlights, and your maps, right? First thing to look for is the crown. And when you found the crown, you found Cassiopeia. The second thing you'll look for will be the rock. The rock is bigger, the square of Perseus is actually bigger than Cassiopeia, so you'll know what you're looking for, and it'll be in the west. Then, and when we'll look at a map in a second, look for the chain of stars that make up the necklace of Andromeda, and they move from the rock up along past Cassiopeia. Then find the Pleiades star cluster, and of course you'll immediately see that it's being followed by Orion. But find that star cluster, and then look for the backward shield and the eye. Now when you found the necklace, I'm saying this for those of you who are Aries, when you find the necklace and you've traced it out, there's 2 extra stars that don't fit in the necklace, right? They're just a little bit farther south. Really reasonably bright stars, and that's the 2-star sheep. That's Aries. You're going to get a free extra special star tonight. Does anybody know what it is? It's the planet Jupiter. It's brighter than any other star out there. It's just about straight overhead, and it's the one that is not the Southwest Airlines airplane. Right? It's just really bright. It's very close to Aries. So if you like to do your forecasting, I guess technically Jupiter is in Aries. I don't know what that means. It means that you're going to make a lot of money. And then the King's Tower is a little tricky. We'll maybe work on the King's Tower. Okay. So this will be a fairly simple map of what you're going to see when you go outside. Toward the west, here's the big rock, which is the square of Pegasus. You'll see Andromeda's chain against the, I guess you'd call this the bottom of Cassiopeia's crown. The dark castle, if you see a few stars headed on this side, you're seeing parts of the castle. And if you've got really good vision, and it is pretty dark, you may be able to make out the 5 stars that make it up. This star here is the closest star you're likely to see that's near Polaris. So if you found the North Star, there's one over closer to Cassie's crown, you probably found the top of Cassie's castle. And then, as I mentioned, once you found Andromeda's chain, the extra 2 stars are Aries. And then finally, we have the Pleiades, which will actually be down, because as we pointed out, when you hold the map up, everything moves down. So the Pleiades will be low, and then the shield will be high. Okay. Are there any questions about the method or about what you might see when you go out? How all this works? Okay.
Are you just gonna look for the brightest ones? Because I mean,
No.
there's so many of them.
There's so many now. This is the reason why Oakland really works for this. In fact, the whole Bay Area works. There aren't very many. This is the best part. So most of them will probably be in one of these patterns. So you do just look for the brightest ones. If you see one that's really not very bright, it's not going to be in one of the pictures, right? But especially in the fall, the stars that you're likely to see, these are going to be the dimmest stars, and it's kind of handy that they're all in the same constellation. These will all be bright, and you won't see very many extra ones here. Same thing for Perseus, those are all bright. What I tried to do in the pictures was to use only 1st and 2nd magnitude stars, and they're the ones that you can pretty well see from here. The nice thing is, once you go out and try this, and this is really the way you do it, is you go out and say, okay, yeah, I got it. And you go in, spin yourself around 3 times, come out, and try to find it again, because it's all about which way is north and all of the rest of it, how that's it. Once you get used to these, you can go to the mountains. You can go to a really dark area where you haven't got a prayer of finding any of these shapes, and you can find the shapes. And once you've found the shapes, you can start to find your way around. So you'll find the first one you'll usually find will be Cassiopeia. You'll find the crown. Then you'll remember, oh, that's right at the bottom of the crown. That's where Andromeda is, right? So then pretty soon you'll have Andromeda. And Perseus is always easy because it's so close to the Pleiades. So really it's a question of practice, remembering which ones you're going to see, and then graduating to darker skies with more stars, and you'll have a fighting chance to find the constellations. Good. Okay, thank you all very much.